Welcome to the Artist Academy podcast, the audio version of our Facebook Live series, Art Talk Tuesday. I'm your host, Andrea Earhart, and I am so excited that you're here to catch the weekly replay of my laid-back yet very inspiring conversations with other full-time professional artists. The purpose of this series is to show aspiring artists like you that it is completely possible to make a great career out of this art thing. And if you ever want to join us live and have your questions answered in real time by myself or featured guests, then just hop over to facebook.com/groups/Artist Academy every Tuesday at 8 p.m. Central Standard Time. I'll see you there. This episode is sponsored by the Artist Academy Advanced Membership, a program for artists who want to up-level their art game by taking it from a hobby or a side hustle to a full-time art business. I've been a professional artist for over 5 years with paintings in several different countries and a client list that includes high-profile companies such as Bass Pro, O'Reilly's, Duck Commander, and many, many more. So I figured out what it takes to build an art business, and now my heart is set on teaching aspiring artists like you to do the same. Go to advancedmember.com, that's advancedmember.com to learn more. This week's episode features Missouri artist John Whytock. Now, before we even started this interview, I knew exactly what I was going to title this episode. Learning from a Legend. When I first started painting for Bass Pro, I knew who John was mostly through the grapevine. I hadn't met him yet, but his reputation for being one of the top artists in the area preceded him. It actually took several years for our paths to cross since we always worked for the same company, but we're just always on separate projects in different locations, different states. I wanted to get John on the podcast because I knew he was full of stories of past art projects from a lifelong career in the arts. In this episode, John tells us all about his days painting for some of the top locations in Vegas. For example, does the Venetian ring a bell? Yup, he painted that, along with many other lucrative projects back in the day. Not trying to be creepy, but I could sit and listen to his cool mural stories all day. I seriously can't get enough and had a smile on my face throughout the entire interview. But let me know what you think about this week's episode with John Whytock. I'm so excited to get you on here. Thank you so much for being so patient and taking time out of your night to come on here. I really appreciate it.
Oh, well, it's my pleasure. Thanks for having me.
Good. Yeah, I was just telling them, we both are contracted by Bass Pro, but you've worked for Bass Pro for a long time, and I've maybe for the last 5 years, but we've never actually really met. And that's who's...
I've seen your painting. I always admired your work, and you seemed like a very fun, happy person to be around. So,
okay,
yeah.
We're done. This is all I need. Okay, great. So whenever I first started Bass Pro, I always knew who you were because people were like, John Whytock. I was like, who is this person? And so I finally got to see your work, and I was like, all right, yeah, I guess he lives up to his reputation.
Oh, well, thank you. That's nice, as long as that was the good side of the reputation.
Oh yeah, for sure. Nothing but amazing things said, for sure. But yeah,
that's cool.
Your work is amazing. And I was just kind of chatting with some of the girls, Rachel and all of them in here. Your website is johnwhytockart.com, and I'll post that in the comments so people can actually see your super detailed experience work. It is how much patience you have on there. I'm just like, man.
That's the main ingredient. Yeah, you gotta really struggle. I've been working on a portrait I've been working on another portrait, but the first one I'm talking about took me a month to paint. It's a painting of, I think it's on the website. It's a painting of a girl standing in front of a bunch of Venetian masks. And so all the Venetian masks are super high detail, and of course the girl's high detail. And
wow.
It's not a very big painting. It's 20 by 24, but it took me almost a month to paint it. So these things take time, So, and I tend to be a bit of a perfectionist.
I can tell.
Not as bad as some people, but
I
will let it go occasionally, but before it's like perfect. but
Yeah.
sometimes it's tough. When you as an artist know that you are subject to your own taste,
Yeah.
and what you will let go and what you won't let go, and sometimes your eye just won't cooperate, and you have to keep working at it until finally you can get it. So sometimes I tell my students that when I'm doing workshops, that's why they call it painting, because it's because it can be. It's such a difficult. So it could be such a difficult thing.
It
Anyway,
is. It really is.
yeah.
Yeah. Emily Million and I are working on one, a big mural right now, and we're just like, it's pain to go through it. We're just like, this is tough. And then we haven't had a
Mm.
project that's been like tough in a while. And so it's like it
Wow.
knocks us down. But yeah, it makes me feel better actually a little bit that you're like that you kind of struggle with it a little bit too. So I'm like, okay, this is normal. This is part of it.
Well, one of the questions that I saw that you normally ask your guests is what one thing you don't want to do without when you're painting,
Yeah.
and one of those things is good reference, because I know that in good photograph or good something that will let me know what it is I'm supposed to paint, because especially when you're doing a mural, sometimes you have to put so much in that you have no idea. You have to go from one element to another, and there might be 10 feet by 10 feet in there that you have to fake. And that's really stressful to try to make it work, trying to almost play God and make nature kind of fake nature.
Yeah.
It can be really stressful. So I don't know if that's what you guys are going through, but
Yeah.
I go through that a lot.
Good. And
So,
it just makes me feel better knowing that we're not the only ones. But yeah, that's exactly we're literally making up a land. Like we're this land that we're making up doesn't exist, but it's what the client wants. And so we're like we're literally just having to make up the majority of it. So, but
wow, that's tough. That can be really hard on you. It's just drawing out of your imagination, and you're creating something out of nothing, which is really cool.
yeah.
But it's so much easier when you have something to look at.
Yes, it is. I just love that you said that too, because like even with your years of experience, you still use reference photos, and I think
Oh
some people just like don't use reference photos. I think that's where we get caught up, and so you just
yeah. Mm,
reaffirming that makes me just it comforts me actually.
that's good.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Okay,
yeah.
so most of so I'm just gonna go with question number one on here, but most of our audience in here are aspiring artists, and
Mm.
they're either like in the middle of starting or they haven't started or they're just kind of painting in their spare time. But I kind of want them to get to know you a little bit. Could you tell us a bit about your backstory and like what was the tipping point for you from like that took you from hobby artist to professional artist?
Okay. Excuse me.
Yeah.
Um, well, I've been in the arts since I was 12. I'm a musician, and
Oh,
I gave my first concert when I was 12 years old to my eighth grade and graduating class. I was the seventh grade, and that was my gift to them. And so I was always in the arts. And so, but when I had kids, that kind of all changed because I had to really make a living.
yeah.
And so, but in the off times, I would draw, and I was really into just being in my own little world. I would create these drawings and pen and inks and that kind of thing. I really enjoyed that, and um, I knew that I wanted to continue to be in the arts because I was a pretty lousy carpenter, but
Okay.
I'm trying to remember. There's so much. I was given an opportunity to do 4 pen and inks by this guy, and I actually got $500 to do those. This is 1978,
Wow.
1979, so it's a long time ago.
Yeah.
But and so I thought that was pretty cool to make that kind of money. Not that I was into the money part of it, because I've always been into the art part of it.
Yeah.
But I also had to make a living. That's such a huge ingredient. And you can't just live on your art, unfortunately. And starving artists is not too far from the truth. Most of us are.
Yeah.
And for me, it's always been feast or famine. But
Yeah.
anyways, to make a long story even longer,
We've got time.
okay. Well, I worked for this guy for 6 months. Got completely ripped off by him. The last job I did for this particular person was 3 4 by 8 foot paintings that I got $49 a piece for, and a plus installation. So that's that. So we're talking like, well, that's kind of where I began to pay my dues. But I didn't stop paying my dues. I'm still paying my dues. But I have learned a lot. the tipping point for me was after about 6 months of getting ripped off by this guy, I had to go back to work. And so I gave God one more chance. And I said, I'm going to spend, I got a job again as a carpenter on a Thursday. And I spent a Wednesday, I was going to make calls to see if I could line up an art project so that I could make some money to feed my family. And so the first call I made was to a company called Multimedia Systems. And I said to the guy that answered the phone, I'm an artist. And he said, can you prove it? This is the very first call I made. And I said, yeah, I can prove it. He said, bring your portfolio, be here in 10 minutes. And so I was there and got a job at an hourly wage, which wasn't bad at the time. And that's where I learned to draw. But that was the turning point for me. If I hadn't gotten that job, the next day I would have gone back to work as a carpenter. And I don't know what would have happened between then and now. But that job, I was there for 2 years, and I learned to draw under some really serious guys who thought that I was a little old to be starting in an art career, so they're going to help me pay my dues, and which they did. And I became an excellent drawer by the time I left there, because they would take my precious drawings, and if they didn't tear them up, they'd put a tissue over them, redraw them, hand them back to me, and say, do it again. So I don't know if you've been through that kind of thing. Real serious, nasty art directors. But anyway, that's another thing. So I learned to draw for that in that space of time. And then the next job I had was in a mural studio where I painted murals for 5 years under under the authority of the guy that worked there, or the guy that owned the shop, and plus all the artists that were there were classically trained artists that I learned everything from, as far as art and painting and color and tone and values and all that stuff, and composition, on and on and on. So I spent 2 years learning to draw, 5 years learning to paint. That has a 7-year apprenticeship.
Wow.
So, which was pretty cool. So those two things were the main ingredients of my committing to an art career.
That's amazing. Yeah. Well, I feel like I've learned a lot from like the Bass Pro crew, like Melvin and just all you guys. Like, I mean, I knew how to paint, like, but when I got on there, I thought I knew how to paint, and I got next to you guys, and I was like, oh, teach me your ways. Yeah, that's amazing. Wow. Okay.
There's so much to.
Sorry. Yeah.
No, there's so much to know. I'm still learning. I got out of well, no, I'll go ahead and ask me whatever questions you want. I don't want to.
Oh no, you're
okay. It'll be interesting.
We can ramble. Okay, so okay. I'm curious about your story. So you worked. What was your next job like after that?
Well, I was employed for 7 years by an hourly wage. At the mural studio, I ended up being the chief artist, the head guy. I had my own studio. I did all the custom work for this. It was the hospitality industry before the advent of computers and printing, the big printers, where we actually hand painted murals, and we did hotels and restaurants and casinos and all kinds of stuff. So all over the country.
Wow.
And yeah, it was pretty cool. And so I whenever we'd get a job, we have like embassy suites. We did a whole bunch of embassy suites, and I would do the prototypes, and then we'd ship them over to the main studio, and the guys would copy my work and send them to the different locations.
Wow.
But after that job finished, I won a mural competition for the San Juan Capistrano mission, and my first job on my own was painting the Rancho Room in I think it was 1986. For the Rancho Room of the Mission San Juan Capistrano. And then from there, I got some more work from them. I painted 3 paintings for their soldiers' barracks, 3 4x8 foot paintings, and a couple of maps. I even helped the archaeologist go on site to one of the old smelters that the Spanish had built in the 1700s, late 1700s, and helped discover, certain things about it. That was really fun. And I did some renderings for him. So that was my first job after the mural studio.
Gosh. And then what? I'm so into your story. What happened next?
What happened next? Well, then it was I had a lot of little stuff that I did. I've pretty much done anything in paint that you can do to make a living. I've done faux finishing and trompe l'oeil and all that stuff. I've done. At one point, in the early 90s, I marbleized the entire United Artists Theater in downtown Los Angeles. The original theater built by Mary Pickford, Douglas Fairbanks Jr., and Charlie Chaplin.
Wow.
I marbleized the whole thing. And so that was a really good job. I was making $5,000 a week in 1992, you know.
Wow.
So, yeah. But it can be, like I said, feast or famine. But there's been lots and lots of years where it's just been really, really hard. But my main business was also the hospitality industry, where I would do custom work for hotels and restaurants. I did a restaurant for Tom Selleck in Hawaii. I did lots of casinos in Las Vegas in the mid 90s. There was a war of ambiance in the Strip in Las Vegas, and all the craftsmen of the world were there, painting murals and doing sculpture and all this kind of stuff. And I had at one time on the Strip in Las Vegas 150 different murals in the major casinos, in the registration areas. So, and the way you get those jobs is, well, back in the day, now I don't know what's going on today because there's so much competition. Everybody's an artist, everybody's a muralist. And so it's just like, in those days, you could pretty much nail down about between $55 and $65 a square foot for a mural. And so, yeah, in the 90s, I was making $250,000 a year painting for the casinos. So, which is pretty cool.
Yeah.
But I was in the door to an architectural design firm called Dougal's Design in Pasadena, and they were the big kids on the block in Las Vegas, and so they would do the major casinos. They did a lot of Mandalay Bay properties, which is Mandalay Bay and the Luxor and the Excalibur and Circus, et cetera, et cetera. And so I did a lot of murals for them, 40 murals alone just in the Luxor. So, but the design firm that I worked for the designers. They would design a project based on the client, the owner's wishes, these themed casinos. And of course, the huge budget, $700 million, was not unusual. And they'd have a couple of $1 million set aside just for art. And so they would call me in and they'd tell me what they wanted. And they'd show me the colors of the room, and then they'd give me what they call an inspiration piece, which was a piece of art that they wanted me to design something kind of after that same style. And so I would do a pencil, and then once it was approved, I would just go into my studio and paint on canvas. And so, so I got my work through the design firm.
Wow.
Sometimes I would deal directly with the owners, but most of the time it was through the designers.
Okay, so you would deal directly with the designers. Do these designers work with the architects, or is that different kind of jobs, or?
They had, within this firm, there were architects that were designing the actual structure. And then, but also in the same firm, they had interior designers that would then decorate the structures that their architects designed. And so, yeah, I worked for a couple. There were 3 primary designers, and of course, the main owner, he was an architect and a designer. So, but it wasn't a small company, but it was small enough to where I got to know everybody real well, because I worked with them for about 10 years in Las Vegas.
That's amazing.
Yeah, it was great. They would always leave the best spots for me. It was really cool.
It's good to know people. Yeah.
Oh, baby. Yeah. That's what it's about, networking. And in the day, it was still really competitive. And that's the other thing that, when you walk through Bass Pro and you say, I want to know what you guys know, that kind of thing, and teach me how to paint. That's the way it was for me, too, because I had, my competition was these major studios, the Evergreen Studio from New York, there was the Art Studio from San Francisco. These are big studios with all kinds of really talented artists that were trying to get the same jobs I was trying to get. And so, because there was so much work there. Have you seen the casino, the Venetian in Las Vegas?
Yes.
Have you seen the ceilings and all the paintings?
Yes.
Yeah, I did a lot of that.
Really?
But so did a lot of the other studios. Yeah.
That's amazing. So I had heard that you or maybe Pietro as well had done some stuff in Vegas. So like when I talk to anybody about Bass Pro, I'm like, I work with the guys who did stuff in Vegas.
Yeah, right.
But I never knew exactly where you were. And so that's really interesting. If my sister-in-law lives in Vegas, and so next time we go there, I'm
Oh,
going to be like, we're going to the Venetian. We're just going to go check
oh,
this out.
yeah, this is great. There's some great art. Most of us copied the artist Tiepolo.
Okay.
He's an Italian fresco painter in the 17th century.
Oh.
And so those are all copies. Most of the artwork of
Oh.
the Venetian. Yeah.
Wow.
Yep.
Oh, good to know. That's awesome. Well,
Yeah. Yeah.
were there good reference photos for that?
Oh yeah, they're killer reference photos. Yeah. We
Oh.
just had to copy good old Tiepolo, which it's easy. It's just to roll off the tongue to copy Tiepolo, but it's harder than it sounds, of course, when you got to copy a master,
Yes.
and try to get it right, So,
That's
but yeah, I did. I don't know that there's a lot of my murals left. A lot of them have been destroyed or have been taken down. They were on canvas.
oh.
Everything I painted in Las Vegas was on canvas.
Wow. Okay, so you paint it like in your studio in Missouri and then you ship them or
I was in a studio in California.
okay.
Yeah, I came from California uh, to do the projects here in Missouri in 2011.
Oh.
So, but yeah, so I'm a California boy,
Wow.
city boy.
That's
Yeah, this is
quite
really
a
cool.
yeah.
Now that in the country.
That's quite a
Yeah.
transition. Yeah.
Oh man, yeah, it's lovely.
Yes,
Yeah.
good. Okay, so do you install them or do you have help installing them?
I have installed them, but most of the time I would hire somebody to install them. I
Okay.
had a friend that installed them, a wallpaper hanger,
Oh, that's so interesting.
Danny.
I'm so interested
Yeah.
in everything you're saying.
Oh, really? Yeah. It was in the day. It was quite a production. I would paint the painting, and of course, I'd have a deadline. What would happen was I go meet the designers, find out what they wanted, do the design, get it approved, get a down payment from usually a third if it was a big job.
Okay.
It wasn't unusual to get $60,000, $70,000 jobs in the studio for years.
Wow.
It was not unusual. Sometimes they were even more than that. Sometimes they were less than that. But I had a studio that would handle a 16-foot by 30-foot canvas, and so I stretched my canvas, and I had found a really good way to do that. And if you ever want to know, let me know. I'll tell you. And
Okay. Yeah.
how to stretch a 30-foot canvas and prime it within a couple of hours.
Okay. I'll
Um,
just come over. It's fine.
okay, yeah,
Okay.
yeah. It's a really neat system.
Yeah.
But then I paint it, and then of course there's always a deadline. And I roll it up, take it to Vegas, and drop it off, and they'd install it, and then inevitably there would be a scratch or something, and so I'd have to go and touch it up and spend a couple of days touching it up, and go and pick up my check and go back home.
Wow.
So I didn't have to spend any time in Vegas. I just did everything in my Big Bear studio in Southern California.
That sounds amazing. Not leaving the studio all day sounds amazing.
It was great.
Oh,
Plus I lived in the forest, so I could, in the wintertime, the snow would fall, and I'd be in my studio listening to music, and the dog would be sitting by the door, and I'd be painting, and I'd have friends come over, and they could talk while I painted. It was a neat thing. I'm looking forward to doing that again because I miss my big studio in Big Bear.
yes. Oh,
Yeah,
that sounds amazing. Okay.
that was cool.
Awesome. Okay. So, I'm just gonna get to the second question real quick. What makes up your typical workday nowadays? Like, how many hours do you spend painting per day?
Well, I asked my wife that this morning, and she said, well, between 8 and 10 a day,
Wow.
usually 5 to 6 days a week.
Wow.
Yeah, today I worked for 8 hours.
That's
Um,
that Bass Pro schedule you've got going on. It's like 10-hour
oh,
days, 8-hour
yeah.
days. Wow, that's a
Oh
lot.
man, that doing those stores was murder. I did stores for Bass Pro for a couple of years, and it was just murder.
It is.
You've done it, right? I know you've done it quite a
Yeah,
bit, right?
it is.
Yeah,
Yeah,
yeah.
it's
It's
great.
hard.
It's
It's hard.
hard.
Yeah,
It really is.
yeah.
It's really hard but it's like rewarding at the end of it too, and
Hmm.
a paycheck is great. So,
That
um,
is helpful. Yeah,
yeah.
yeah.
Let's see. Can you talk us through your painting process? Like, are there any methods or techniques that you've picked up through your years of experience? Like, do you
Oh
draw
boy.
it first? What do you do?
Well, if I'm really serious about it and want to do it super right, like a lot of times I'm just kind of in a hurry, so I'll find something that's pleasant, and I'll find a photo, and I'll work from the photo, or sometimes a lot of times I'll enhance the photo, or I'll take several shots of different things and put them all together. But uh, I did a lot of copies of Norman Rockwell when I was working for the mural studio in the beginning of my thing back in the 80s. And so I read about all his processes. And so I kind of adopted his process of doing a painting, which is what he would do would, of course, come up with an idea first, the germ of an idea, and then do thumbnails, which are just little squares, and you get your design down and you figure out where all the elements of your paintings are going to go once you got your idea. And then when you figured out your little thumbnail sketch and the basics, then of course you depending on your subject matter, you get your reference together. And I always when I was doing the Vegas stuff or when I do my own murals, I always photograph my own models, and I always go to the site and I take pictures of the landscape or the buildings or whatever it is I'm going to be painting, whether it's an interior or an exterior or something like that.
Yeah.
And then when it's all assembled, then I'll come back and I'll do a larger sketch, a drawing, and sometimes I'll do a super detailed drawing with pencil, and I'll make a Xerox copy of it. Several Xerox copy, a regular copy. I'll print up several black and whites.
Mm-hmm.
Sorry to say Xerox copy, that's like ancient, but I print up several black and whites, and then I will work out my color palette on those black and whites, and just design the color and the way it's going to work.
Yeah.
And then once it's thoroughly planned like that, I'll either draw it onto my canvas or I'll project it onto my canvas, whichever I can do. Sometimes, like at Bass Pro, you can't use a projector. So I don't recommend using a projector unless you can draw. If you can draw, go ahead and use a projector. It cuts your time in a quarter. You spend quarter of the time drawing as you would as, spending hours laboring over a drawing.
Yeah.
But if you don't know how to draw, don't use a projector. You become dependent on it, and then there was a guy in Bass Pro that couldn't draw, and he was doing these big fish on the wall in a store in the East Coast, and he had to project in his hotel room at night and cut out templates.
Oh.
And then he'd take the templates to the store and he'd draw them onto the wall because he couldn't draw.
Oh.
And so I'm just saying, use a projector if you have to, but not if you can't draw. Learn how to draw. That's really important.
It is.
That is the spine. That is the skeleton of good painting is drawing.
Yeah.
And you know what a body looks like without a skeleton. So.
I pictured that in my head.
Just to be kind of a blob.
Yes.
Right. So yeah, good drawing is really essential. So.
Yeah, definitely, for sure. So I see a little painting right behind you. Is that Adam Wolkin? Is that?
It is.
Yeah.
It is Adam. Let me adjust the thing. Yeah, that's Adam.
Yeah.
He was kind enough to model for me. This painting was just accepted into the IG, the International Guild of Realists show that comes up in Washington, D.C. In September.
Wow.
Out of 450 paintings, this was accepted along with about 90 others. So, with other people, I mean.
Dang.
So, yeah, and Adam was kind enough to model for me. What a guy.
Yes.
Yeah. You want to closer up?
Sure, yeah, that'd be great.
Yeah.
I'm like putting my face close to the thing.
Yeah.
Very cool.
There, that's Adam. This painting called The Writer.
Wow, that is just.
Yeah.
How long did that take you?
Well, this is one of those deals where I actually put together all my reference and did drawings and thumbnails and figured it all out and then did the color sketch.
Yeah.
So it took about 2 weeks.
Oh.
Together, maybe 3 weeks.
That's
about 2.5 weeks.
That's not very long.
Yeah. Well, no, it's not. But the bench is really labor intensive, and it was a lot of fun doing the paper. Adam would throw them up, and I would take pictures of the papers flying in the wind. And then, of course, posing Adam in all these different shots in Sequoia Park, and so he was a great guy. We're really good friends. We worked together for almost 6 years in the museum.
Yes. That's amazing.
Adam and Aaron and me. Yeah.
Yeah, they're great.
So, yeah, they're cool. Good guys. Okay, back to now.
There we go.
I wish I was as good looking as Adam, but what are you gonna do?
Oh, okay, yeah. Let's see. You already answered what is the one thing you don't paint without. Are there any art lessons you learned the hard way?
Yeah, I could bore you for hours about that. I was talking again to my wife about that, which one would be the one to tell. And she's coming to adjust the light. Thanks, honey.
Thanks, honey.
Um,
There we go.
art lessons. Wow, yeah, there's been some. Oh, I'll give you one that you might want to think about that I learned the hard way.
Okay.
I was just beginning. It was a small job. I was doing it for a designer from some little podunk furniture store. She got a job through some people, and I did this kind of this down in one of their rooms. I painted the walls as you entered the room. These kind of Egyptian motif type things that I designed and painted, and and it was a $500 job. No, I'm sorry, it was an $800 job, but the designer was 100%ing me, it's called, where she charges 100% of what I get. So I got 400 and she got 400.
Oh.
Right? And that happens a lot.
Mm-hmm.
But the very intuitive and intelligent homeowner came up to me and said, the designer had told me that she wanted me to write you a check directly. So how much do I owe you for this? I said, really? Oh, okay, that's kind of unusual, but okay, yeah, it's $400. And she didn't write me the check, but she went and called the designer and said that she was outraged that the designer would be 100%ing her for this project. And she was really ticked off, the lady. And of course, the designer was really ticked off that I said something about it. And I ended up eating it. I ended up getting, I think it was half of $400. So because the homeowner was not going to pay $800 for that. So I learned my lesson to number one, it's really hard to negotiate prices when they've got all the chips and you don't have any money and you're hungry. But so you've got to kind of take what you can get. But the other thing is to keep your mouth shut, and let the designer and the client hash it out and stay out of that. So that was one lesson learned. It was a hard one. But there's been plenty of hard lessons.
That's a pretty good lesson, I think. Yes.
Mm-hmm.
Just
Another good lesson. Let me just give you one more.
Sure, please do.
I was working with a designer in it was a Luxor, and I had done a whole lot of work already for the Luxor, and this new designer came onto the scene, and she was really trying to throw her weight around, and she thought that by kind of oppressing me that would help her image. Mm-hmm. And so she was really difficult to work with, and I finally ended up finding what it was she wanted, and I provided her with photographic reference, and I even made a comprehensive, a comp for her. Do you know what that is?
Yeah.
It's a small version of the painting.
Oh, okay.
They used to call comps.
Okay.
Or they used to call them maquettes as well. Okay. Which is a misnomer because maquette actually means a three-dimensional model. But so they call them maquettes or comps. So they made a comp for this woman, and I showed it to her. Anyway, to make a long story short, I kept all this documented in emails.
Yeah.
Fortunately, I did, because when the owner of the Mandalay Bay saw that, or the Luxor saw that mural, he said, "Take this out of here. This is the ugliest thing I've ever seen in my life. Get rid of it now." And so he was really angry. He called me and said, "What the hell are you thinking?"
Yeah.
And so I had to provide them with all the detailed information that the designer gave me, and all the approvals, and yes, this is what I want. No, this is what I don't want. And that way I saved my bacon. Because they were my main client, and that designer lost her job because of that. But she wanted to blame it on me, saying that I went rogue on him and all that kind of stuff, and passed the buck. So I have the emails to prove that I was not the one that messed up.
Wow.
So
always keep everything in writing. Yeah.
Yeah, that's right.
Yes.
Yeah. Wow. Yeah. Keep a good record. Yeah.
Yes,
no doubt.
That's crazy. I feel like artists, I guess with a lot of professions too, they're like, every artist I talk to, it's something about financials that they're like, oh, yep, I got screwed over, or whatever the term is, to on money on this and that. It's always something like that. It's so sad. But
yeah, we're notoriously poor business people.
Yes, that's so true, myself included. Yeah, it's all learning the hard way.
Yeah.
Do you have a favorite past project?
Yeah, there's been a bunch of them. Hmm. The museum, the Wonders of Wildlife.
Oh, yeah.
That's a really cool project because with hotels and restaurants and casinos, I've watched so many of my paintings be destroyed over the years. I've seen 40 by 17-foot mural in Mandalay Bay Shark Reef mural that I painted, rolled out with paint so they could project ads onto that wall.
Ah,
So it's really nice to know that my paintings in the Wonders of Wildlife are going to be there for a long time.
yeah.
And so that's rewarding, Plus the NRA Museum, I did a bunch in there too. So
Yeah. The the
um,
the what museum you said?
the NRA Sporting Arms
Oh.
Museum in the actual store, Bass Pro.
Oh.
Plus I did the ceiling in the Bass Pro too, all the animals on the ceiling.
Oh, cool.
So
Oh, really? Wait,
yes.
did you paint them on the ceiling?
No, I painted them on
Okay.
canvas,
Okay.
7-foot by 10-foot canvas,
Okay.
and then they blew them up 300%, I think it was.
Wow.
So they were super tight paintings.
Yeah.
Yeah, I spent a year doing that before I got to the museum.
Wow.
Just here painting. Yeah. Do you know Bob? Did you know Bob Sobchak?
No, I got there right after Bob. So yeah.
Okay.
But yeah.
Yeah. He was the one who called me out and called me out here to Missouri, and he's a great guy, a really talented artist,
Yeah.
and really intelligent guy, and very creative. He was the creative, one of the creative minds behind the museum that really developed a lot of the Johnny Morris's vision. Bob was the one who actually developed it.
So cool.
So
There's so
he
much.
was really
There's so much that goes on
yeah.
with making something like that. And if any of you guys don't know, the Wonders of Wildlife here in Missouri is like it's now the world's best new aquarium this past year, right? It's impressive. If anybody's taking a road trip through the Midwest, stop at the Wonders of Wildlife because it is so cool, and you'll get to see all of John's paintings. But yeah.
That's right. I did 18 dioramas, and you can see 16 of them, 16 and a half.
Okay. Okay.
Yeah. One of them is covered by the interactive screen for the kids. That's an 80-foot by 12-foot mural that I painted at the shipwreck.
Yeah.
And then the other one is I've got videos of myself rolling out my own work, painting out my own work, because I had to paint something else over the top of it. So anyway,
Yeah.
I painted 18 dioramas, but you can only see 16 and a half of them.
Well, I guess what is that, like 85% or what is that? It's pretty
Something like that.
pretty good.
But but as far as good projects, that's one of the best, because it's going to last.
Yeah, definitely.
So much of the industry, the hospitality industry, goes along with the fashion of the day, and they'll destroy work to put different work in.
Yeah.
So
Definitely, yeah. My fiance and I were walking through the Wonders of Wildlife here maybe 6 months ago, and so he's a hunter, so he was looking at all the dioramas and like all the taxidermy, and I'm looking straight past all of that. I'm like, look at these paintings, and like taking photos. He's like, oh, there's paintings here. Okay. It's so funny what our eyes are just drawn to.
yeah, that's funny.
But yeah. So what are your future art plans and goals? Do you have any upcoming projects? What are you working on right now? What's going on in John's life?
Oh, well, I'm doing nothing but fine art these days. This painting just got in a major show. I just got two other paintings accepted into the ARC, the ARC show, Art Renewal Center. I just got a painting accepted, or just got returned. In fact, it was this painting. Was in the Oil Painters of America exhibition in St. George. So I'm just rolling along in the fine art world. I'm in 3 galleries, two really cool galleries, one in St. Louis and one in Tulsa, Oklahoma, and I'm still building up a repertoire of paintings to get into other galleries. But that's my main thrust right now is doing the fine art thing, which is really nice to be able to do the paintings you want to do for a change.
Yes.
Not somebody else's stuff.
Yes.
So, yeah.
Yeah, definitely. And just to be able to stay in your studio. Like I do a lot of logos around town and like murals around like street art kind of stuff. And so, but lately it's like it's all outside doing other stuff for other people. And I'm so jealous of your studio time right now. That sounds amazing. I need to shift gears a little bit. I've actually never tried to do a contest or any kind of thing like that. That's a completely new territory for me.
It's exciting. It's exciting. In fact, it will really tighten you up too, because or it'll tighten up your style, and because the competition is fierce out there
Yeah.
in the fine art. Oh boy, there's some really good painters,
Yeah.
really wonderful painters. Yeah.
I'm sure you
In fact,
hold your own though.
oh yeah, I'm doing really good considering I've only been in this. Well, I've been painting for 40 years,
Yeah.
but I've only been in fine art for a couple. But
Yeah.
so I can't say I'm just a beginner, But here's something of note. Of the artists that got into this latest show with the International Guild of Realists, um, uh, 2/3 of them are women.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, so there you go.
That's so cool.
So much for that whole glass ceiling thing. It doesn't happen in art.
No, that's so cool.
Yeah.
I'm gonna have to tell Emily that. She's big on stuff like that. That's so cool.
Oh, is she?
Yeah.
Yeah,
Awesome.
cool.
Okay, so is there any advice that you would give artists who want to make art their full-time career but just don't know where to start? Like, where's a good starting point for aspiring artists?
Good starting point. Yeah, good question. I spent when I was working as a carpenter, I would come home and get my tired butt off the couch and go develop a portfolio. If I didn't have a portfolio when I went into that first guy, I wouldn't have gotten the job.
Yeah.
And so, those were the days. I don't know what's happening these days, but in those days, exactly, I don't know exactly what's happening. I'm not sure where to go besides the same old route: designers, architects, city projects. Get on. What is it? Art callforartists.org.
Cafe.
Whatever it is. Have you been on?
Yeah.
Huh?
The cafe, Call for Artists, or call.
Yeah, that one.
Yeah.
Yeah, where they show all the different projects around the country.
Yeah.
But the most important thing though is to really learn to your craft. I think I've always been I've always believed that there will always be somebody who will want the best, and so I've always tried to be the best painter I could be, and so I pushed myself to really learn anatomy, faces, figures, clothing, hands, feet. Because if you can draw a human figure and you can paint a human figure along with the clothing, you can paint anything.
Very true.
So, because it's the most difficult thing.
Mm-hmm.
And not that I want to be a portrait artist, but I could be. I was a portrait artist for a few years. Did portraits at the Renaissance Fair, live sittings,
Wow.
but in Conte crayon. But so I would say that the fundamental thing for an artist is to really learn your craft, really learn how to do it well. Go to museums, go to galleries, see what everybody else is up to try not to isolate yourself, but really go out there and see what people are doing. And with the internet, of course, it makes it much easier to see what people are doing internationally.
Yeah.
And the other thing is to, as far as getting dough, making money, there's lots of ways you can do it. Lots of different things you can do to paint for a living, and I've done all of them. So it's just a question of, pounding the pavement, making the calls, and having something to schlep around, your portfolio or whatever. But you really need to have something to show. Unfortunately, schooling doesn't matter a hill of beans to most art directors. They just want to see your talent. They don't care if you went to Harvard and graduated with an MFA and or some other heavy duty thing. If you can't draw, they're not going to use you.
Yeah.
So.
Definitely.
Yeah, nobody ever, in all my years of showing my portfolio, nobody ever asked me what school I went to.
Same. Same.
Yeah.
Like,
Interesting, huh?
yeah, it is. I mean,
yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Well,
I mean, if you go to an art school, of course, that's a whole different ball game. But
yeah.
most colleges nowadays teach more about theory and about modern art and those crazy things, as opposed to how to actually produce quality art.
That is very, very true. Yeah, I feel like I got taught like how to think of stuff to paint and like theories behind it, but like the actual painting, it was not as much. But I mean, yeah, I don't know.
Yeah.
Well, amazing. Okay, well, thank you so much for coming on here and spending part of your night on here with us. I really appreciate it, and I know a lot of aspiring artists in our group are going to get a lot out of this. It's just so nice to see someone who has made art their full-time career for so long and who is just so good, and it's something to look up to, really.
Oh, you're really sweet. Thanks, Andrew. It was a pleasure. Thanks for asking me, and anytime.
Awesome. Well, you have a good night. Thanks again.
You too. Bye.
This episode is sponsored by the Artist Academy Advanced Membership, a program for artists who want to up-level their art game by taking it from a hobby or a side hustle to a full-time art business. I've been a professional artist for over 5 years with paintings in several different countries and a client list that includes high-profile companies such as Bass Pro, O'Reilly's, Duck Commander, and many, many more. So I figured out what it takes to build an art business, and now my heart is set on teaching aspiring artists like you to do the same. Go to advancedmember.com, that's advancedmember.com to learn more. Don't forget to subscribe to the podcast and leave a review. Also, if you ever want to join us live and have your questions answered in real time by myself or featured guests, then just hop on over to facebook.com/groups/Artist Academy every Tuesday at 8 p.m. Central Standard Time. And I'll see you next week.